It is 6:30 and members of council are assembled if you're ready to begin.
Okay, thank you, Don. Good evening, everyone. We'll call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome all members of the committee, all members of the public who are with us here this evening, and of course, everybody watching via the live stream. We're glad that you're with us. The second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and Councillor Grace has that this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Okay, thank you. So we'll now move on to disclosures of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments. We have no open forum requests this evening. So that moves us on to delegations. We do have 2 delegations this evening. Just remind both of our delegations that council has allotted 10 minutes for our delegations. So we appreciate if you'd stick to that timeline. So our first delegation is from Stephen Van Lefeld, and he's the founder and chief executive officer of eSupply Canada. So we'll turn the floor over to you, sir. We'll just push the button there in the center and that'll turn it on for you. There you go.
Can you hear me? Excellent. So Mayor Charbonneau, council members, senior leaders, and community members, I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with all of you this evening. My name is Stephen Van Loffeld. I am a member of Saugeen First Nation, and I am founder and CEO of eSupply Canada. Before I get to eSupply, I want to talk about my journey from when I left the community really to why I'm sitting here today. So I left the community. If we can switch the slide, please. Apparently this does work. It is working. So hot potato, you're it. So I grew up here. Born and raised, moved away in, what was it, 2000 to pursue post-secondary education, and really moved all over Turtle Island, also known as Canada. Worked in a number of positions, increasingly senior level positions, and made my way up to leading Indigenous child welfare for all of Ontario. I was the executive director of the Association of Native Child and Family Service Agencies of Ontario. Was really responsible for taking our members' voices and driving system level change among Indigenous child welfare, right across Ontario. But I really wanted to bring that experience that I'd gained at a national, at a provincial, and at a local level back to the community, back to the area. This is where I was born and raised. And so, I was lucky enough to be elected to council in 2016. Served a term on council at Saugeen. One of my portfolios was economic development, and business and economic development is really my passion. Using economic development as a way to drive change, at the individual, family, as well as the community level, I think is really important. And what I saw at the within my community, I think is emblematic of Indigenous communities right across Canada. Right, if I look at Saugeen, a lot of beauty, a lot of challenges, but considerable opportunity. And so, I saw really 3 challenges that, present within my community is also present within many Indigenous communities. And one was a lack of businesses to really stimulate an economy, right? If you don't have the variety and type of businesses, revenue leaves your community, economic leakage, right? And that's happening within our community, happens within many Indigenous communities right across Canada. As a result, we're not able to participate in development within the territory, within procurement. We look at the MCR project happening over here, 1 to 2 billion in direct procurement is happening year over year. Phenomenal, right? But if you don't have the businesses, how are you supposed to participate in those opportunities? It's a challenge, right? And we also see that governments, municipal, federal, provincial governments, they've made commitments to economic reconciliation, commitments to Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But again, how are those relationships supposed to be enhanced with a lack of businesses, right? And so those were the challenges that I was looking at and sought out to address. And so really, I was looking at what are we purchasing as a government, as a nation? Where are we getting those supplies from? What could we do with that revenue if we had a vehicle to invest back in community? And so I started eSupply Canada. So what we are, we're a national online distributor of office, janitorial, industrial, and print marketing. We are a one-stop shop for all your business supply needs. No longer do communities, industry, governments need to go to multiple suppliers, multiple big box vendors. We provide a one-stop shop portal for all of that. Carry over 1.2 million products. We go direct to manufacturers right across Canada. That gives us national scale, but it also allows us to reduce our costs and pass those cost savings off onto our end users, right? That allows us to compete with big box, billion-dollar big box retailers. And these are high volume recurring supplies. So great model. And what I did is using that as a vehicle to address the issues that I mentioned. So what we do is we provide a vehicle for Indigenous communities to address economic leakage. You can net back revenue simply by purchasing these supplies from your own eSupply business. Again, we provide that one-stop shop. So we're providing a convenience portal. We provide a vehicle for industry, governments, and Canadians to partner with Indigenous communities and businesses. You know, this is the most simplest low-hanging fruit in participating in reconciliation, and specifically economic reconciliation. Businesses, communities are getting these supplies from somewhere, typically big box retailers. We provide an Indigenous alternative to that. And we make it easy for industry to support economic reconciliation, and we provide an Indigenous alternative to the big box. You know, our goal is to be the #1 Indigenous supplier to industry, government, and Canadians. We're well on our way, and we're in year number 3. It's been phenomenal growth. I really appreciate the opportunity to be speaking with you about that here today. Moving forward, we're actually moving into a tech space. And there's 3 issues that we're going to be solving. One is providing Indigenous communities with that vehicle to address leakage. And so we're providing these customized storefronts for communities, focusing on Indigenous, rural, remote, northern communities that are typically purchasing online from big box retailers. Now they can have their own storefront. They can use that storefront to also participate in procurement with developers within their territory. And they can also use that storefront to earn revenue from anybody that wants to support that community. A great way to earn revenue, invest it back in the programs. We know budgets are being cut. Great way to drive revenue and net back revenue from your everyday purchases. We're also using that to create a sales funnel for nonprofits and charities. We've got 89,000 nonprofits and charities, greater need as a result of COVID, dwindling number of people actually contributing to nonprofits and charities. So there's a fundamental need to be able to increase the revenue, right? And so we give them, again, a vehicle to be able to drive revenue from their members, from Canadians, right? Netting back as well. And then general Canadians that actually want to move into an online space, but don't know how or don't know where to start. So this is kind of what it looks like over here. That'll be launching in the next 3 months. You guys are one of the first individuals to actually get a taste of a view of what is to come. And so this is where we're going. This is who we are. It's an exciting time. Specifically to Saugeen Shores. I know you guys are the Municipal Act of 2001 actually compels you to have your own procurement policy, right? Fair, transparent. But what I would encourage all of you is to establish an Indigenous procurement policy. You know, you've made the land acknowledgement in 2022. Awesome, love the painting over here. A lot more work still can be done. One of which is the procurement policy. Federal government, a lot of industry leaders have, you know, set a commitment to a 5% procurement policy. If I look at your 2021 budget, there's a line item in there. Materials and supplies, 6.5 million. that line alone would, result in 375,000 directed towards an Indigenous business. So I would encourage you to do that. The city of Regina has also made a recent commitment to Indigenous procurement. Great opportunity to further enhance those relationships. But we're more than a supplies company. 1% of our revenue actually goes to the eSupply Future Leaders Development Fund. It's a pot of resources. We give scholarships to Indigenous students pursuing post-secondary education in business, economics, law, and the trades. We've recently made a $25,000 10-year commitment to the Chippewas and Nawash. This summer, we've put 9 Indigenous students through summer camp. So we've funded 9 of them. We've contributed laptops to Indigenous learners in the OPG Millwright program. And we've also been named Indigenous Business of the Year from the Canadian Small and Medium Business Magazine. So a lot of great stuff happening. And I'll leave it at that and pass it back to you, Mayor, and answer any questions. Gwedge.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Are there questions or comments for Stephen, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Stephen. Just really remarkable, and it's quite a feat, and very, very impressive, and congratulations for a great initiative. And it's wonderful for Saugeen First Nation and other peoples, of course. And I just wondered about the 6.5 million. You mentioned, we have a line for material and supplies, and you mentioned about that would be $375,000, which is 5%. Another time you mentioned 10% commission on all sales. So 10% would be 650,000. So how does that work? How does that work, Steve? I'm just interested in how much money, like from an economic spin-off perspective, what kinds of dollars are going to be, directed back to Saugeen First Nation would be of interest, and how many employees? That's the second question. And jobs will this create? And thirdly, where is all the stuff housed from? Where's the warehouse, and where's it all shipped out of?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of parts to your first question. So one is I encourage you to choose eSupply as a supplier of choice, right? We do want to be a supplier. I know that all of your stuff is posted on bids and tenders, and we're constantly looking for opportunities on there. Also encourage you around the low value acquisitions. Those are P card purchases, credit card purchases you can do when, outside of contract. Encourage that. But what we do is we set up actual portals. So Saugeen Shores could have their own portal and actually net it back to the community. Now we would work with you on how do we set that up. But again, we carry over 1 million supplies, everything that roads, waterworks, you name it, uses and consumes from various suppliers. We have the ability to set up that portal. And so that's the one that I showed you over there. But that would go back into the community, the 10% from all of the spend from that. And so that's where we're moving towards with the respective communities, charities, and individuals. So it would be up to you where to direct those resources back. Now, if you were to support eSupply Canada, that would just support the business and allow us to reinvest back into more people, local sales reps, you name it. In terms of where do we warehouse it, we don't warehouse it. Our business model is drop ship, right? We go direct to manufacturers, we go direct to national wholesalers, we go direct to master distributors, the people that sell to brick and mortar retailers. I don't want the risk. I don't want the overhead of actually having to carry those costs, right? It's a big risk. So I go direct to them. They provide me with a product and pricing file. I upload it to my system. When an order is placed, I push it through to their warehouses. They pick it, they pack it, they ship it to our customer. That's what allows us to be nimble. That's what allowed us, when I started this company at the height of, just as COVID was starting, I launched this company February 16th, 2020. COVID happened 3 weeks later. Not a great place to be in when you're selling office supplies and building materials. Not good, but the business model allowed us to go lean and nimble, right? And we actually donated at-cost office supplies to Indigenous communities across Ontario.
Gotcha. Well, again, congratulations. You talked in your presentation about there's lots of challenges, and there are a lot of challenges. We're all trying to bite them off one at a time, but you also talked about opportunities. And this is a great opportunity, and congratulations for all the great work you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there further comments or questions? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And through you, I'll echo the congratulations. The storefront idea is pretty intriguing. Are you planning to do storefronts in Grey and Bruce counties? at any
That's
location?
the ultimate goal. I'm talking with some large folks over here around what is it that they're purchasing and what do they need, so we can actually have the right quantity of supplies on site. So fingers crossed within the next 12 months that there will be a local storefront at least, our first and what could be our only storefront here within the territory.
Very good. Further comments? Well, thanks again for coming in, Stephen. It's really great of you to be here. And I think we have a report coming up later on our agenda where our staff is going to present council with the opportunity of purchasing through eSupply. But it's really worth noting that in that report, the comment that's made over and over again is it's an opportunity to reduce the town's costs. The fact is that you're a very effective business. You're providing products at costs lower than perhaps we could get otherwise. So it's a win for the taxpayer, win for our neighbors in the First Nation, and maybe opportunities to do even more to provide to get funding toward Indigenous people and businesses at Saugeen First Nation. So anyway, I really appreciate you coming in and creating that and congratulations on your success. And we wish you a bunch more success. There's going to be a lot more opportunity in our region in the coming years. And so I'm sure you're going to be right there to seize it.
You bet.
So thank you
Mayor,
very much.
Council members, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now our second delegation is from Stéphane Labelle and talking to us about transportation services from Saugeen Mobility Regional Transit. Mr. Labelle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Saugeen Mobility and Regional Transit, or SMART as it's called. Next slide, please. Thank you. Was founded about 43 years ago, focused on disability transportation. We've changed the focus. Instead of disability, we're now focused on mobility. There have been studies that have proven that there is a link between mental and physical health and mobility. We operate currently in 10 municipalities. So around Elderslie, Brockton, Chatsworth, Grey Highlands, Hanover, Huron-Kinloss, Kincardine, Saugeen Shores, Southgate, and West Grey. We are always trying to go into more municipalities. We would like to service all of Grey and Bruce counties. And so we are planning to do some presentation in front of further municipalities. We are a nonprofit entity, so we are a charity. We accept donations and issue tax receipts. Next slide, please. So our primary focus is to provide transportation services to physically and or mentally challenged individuals. Next slide, please. We operate under the concept of a municipal partnership. So right now we've got the 10 municipalities that have signed a partnership agreement. And if we have any more municipalities that want to join us, then we just rewrite the partnership agreement and have all the municipalities sign. Next slide, please. We have 10 municipalities, one representative per municipality, which includes Councillor Grace as a director, as part of our board of directors. And within the office that we have 4 individuals that take care of invoicing, dispatching, administration, and management. Next slide, please. So we have a fully operational infrastructure with a toll-free number, email address, website. And now those 10 municipalities that I was talking about, they represent 5,000 square kilometers. That is a huge area. And we have 23 vehicles that we use to provide services to these 10 municipalities, which includes 12 9-passenger vehicles and 10 accessible minivans, as well as a 30-passenger accessible bus for group visits, group outings. Next slide, please. So we've received 2 new vans within the last few months. We are expecting a third van within the next few months to the next few years, all depending on the supply shortage of microchips. Our drivers are currently dispatched by the Smart Office, either through the smartphone app or through the phone. And although our clients would benefit from using an app on their phone to register and to put in their drive requests, 70 to 80% of our clients would prefer to call us on the phone to make their registration and ride requests. It's just, it speaks to the type of clientele that we have at Smart. Next slide, please. So the reason why this slide is up is to indicate, first of all, those are the two types of vehicles that we use at Smart. Now, ideally, we'd like to use a minivan. It uses less gas, of course, than the bigger 9-passenger vehicle. And in the 9-passenger vehicle, we find that at the most, we'll have 1 to 2 clients for each ride. However, and that is the reality of the world we live in today, there are more and more people that require a larger wheelchair, and the only vehicle capable of accepting these wheelchairs are the 9-passenger buses. I am looking at getting a vehicle that's in between the larger and the smaller minivan, but that's a vehicle that costs $150,000, so it's quite an investment. Next slide, please. Our current budget comes from user fees, municipalities, and provincial gas tax program. So 22% of our revenue comes from user fees, the rest coming from province and municipalities. Now, we cannot accept the provincial gas tax program money unless we're in a deficit situation, probably because the province doesn't want us to waste the money. That's basically what I'm assuming. Next slide, please. Our current fee structure is 55 cents per kilometer for a minimum fee of $7.50. So for $7.50, that buys you a ride that will last 10 kilometers. So from Port Elgin to, somebody help me out here, 10 kilometers. Perfect. All right. And compared to a taxi ride that would cost a little more, compared to another service that is in the Owen Sound region, where 10 kilometers could cost you hundreds of dollars, and you only find out how much you owe them when you get the invoice. So we are pretty, we think we are pretty affordable. We also charge a $22 wait time. So if you're going to the hospital and we have to wait for you, we'll charge you per hour. Now, one attendant can ride for free with the person going on the ride. Next slide, please. Saugeen Shores currently has 314 clients. That's a big number compared to the other municipalities. Now, this year, 2022, your citizens used 4,000 rides compared to 3,000 in 2021. So you can see that the numbers are going slowly but surely to pre-pandemic levels, where, for example, in 2019, there were 6,000 rides. And I should say that Saugeen Shores is the municipality where the rides are the longest. I'm sure it's partly because there are a lot of rides to Owen Sound, but you use our service a lot. Municipal contributions this year are $131,000 compared to $120,000 last year. This increase is partly because of the 7% increase that we requested from the municipalities to keep up with inflation, and partly because your rides went up, and I assume that your population has gone up as well since last year. Next slide, please. Now, in Ontario, 18% of the population is over the age of 65. In Gray and Bruce counties, 26% of the population is over the age of 65. And the age of the population, the average age is 45 years old compared to 42 years old for the province of Ontario. So all this to say that we are slowly but surely getting older. And it is possible over the next few years that more and more people will require a service like SMART provides. Now, 36% of our rides are for medical purposes. The rest are for social outings, education, employment, and such. Next slide, please. Now, that is all that I have for you, except for one last point, which is that we're looking at levels of service. So, for example, we're looking at the option of offering Sunday service and evening service during the week, but that will come at a cost. And the cost is in the package that I provided to you. Now, there's a third option as well, apart from the status quo and evening service and Sunday service, which would be the municipality pays nothing. The only thing with this would be that your citizens would pay $1.75 per kilometer. So that's 3 times the current fee that we charge, which is significant. That's all I have for you.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Then we'll ask if there's questions or comments from members of the committee. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Stefan, thanks for your presentation. And I sat in on the interviewing committee when you were hired about a year ago, and the board made a great choice. And you've been there about a year now, I guess. Has it been a year yet?
It's been a year, yes.
It's just about a year, right?
Yeah.
And so congratulations. You're doing a fine job by the looks of it. And
Thank you,
well,
Councillor.
and a solid presentation this evening. I'm just wondering, with your Bruce County has just, I believe, carried out a transportation study, master plan study. I know Gray County has done some great work with their transportation program. They have a direct line, I think, from Owen Sound to Guelph. And so they've invested $1.5–2 million in their transportation system, new dollars, in the last 3–4 years. Is there much discussion happening between Saugeen Mobility and Bruce County and Gray County to talk about cross-border transportation system and more of the conventional, even maybe more of the conventional type transit? But is there much discussion happening?
There are discussions ongoing. There's a study ongoing by the IBI consulting company. They have until September to look at the transit services that are offered by Gray Transit Route, Saugeen Mobility, and what type of transit services would be required in Bruce County. Once they make their recommendations, I suspect that the recommendation will be to bring up transit at the county level, and from there manage the services that are provided by companies like SMART and GTR.
So there are those discussions happening. And so you've reached out, like Saugeen Mobility yourself, reached out to Gray County, and is there ongoing discussions?
Yes. And we also have an agreement with HCSS, Home and Community Support Services, to provide to them accessible transportation services where they cannot provide, where their capacity is maxed out.
Right.
And we're in discussion with GTR to do the same. They provide mostly conventional transportation, and they would like us to provide accessible transportation for them.
Maybe some good partnership opportunities there that do exist that we attempted to do for years, but never quite got there. But it sounds like you're continuing to work on that. So I think there's a good opportunities between Bruce County and Gray County and Saugeen Mobility. So keep up the great work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Grace.
Thanks, Stefan. Nice to see you again. Since joining the board, I've always thought that this was one of the best ways that we spend municipal dollars providing the service. But since joining the board, I've had the opportunity to see, more up close what goes into it, and all the work you do. And, I just want to tell my colleagues, echo what the Vice Deputy Mayor said, is that you're doing a fantastic job. And I feel really confident under your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there further comments? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you for the presentation, Stefan. I too had the pleasure of sitting on the SMART board for a period of time, Vice Deputy Mayor Mayette, and I learned a lot of things there. And one of the things that I learned was that the business model isn't a conventional business model. It's subsidized, essentially operates at a loss, which is subsidized by the municipality. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Yes, because when I went in there, I went in there with a mindset that, like most transit systems, like when you hear about them talking about the TTC, for instance, they want more ridership, because more ridership is going to generate more income and lower the costs. And so I went in there saying, well, if you advertise more, if you give discounts, if you give bulk ticket sales, and they stopped me and they said, no, you don't understand. If we get more riders, that means we will lose more money. I went, oh, wait a minute. That's certainly is an unconventional business model, right? But what you're suggesting, and through the questions that Vice Deputy Mayor had, was that by partnering with other non-handicapped riders and providing more conventional transit, increasing their ridership would in fact create a situation where the lien on the municipalities would go down. Is that what you're suggesting?
The way the current formula works with the Ministry of Transportation is that 70% of the formula for municipality contribution comes from ridership and 30% comes from population. So the more rides, the more the municipality ends up paying. Now, if you were to go to the third scenario that I mentioned, where you pay nothing and the citizens pay $1.75, perhaps we could end up in the black instead of being in such a deficit every year. I don't know. I think we're going to see how it works out, depending on the municipalities that choose to go that way.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm encouraged by just the idea that you're exploring these opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further comments? I don't see any. Well, I thank you very much for coming in. It's nice to have you here. We haven't had an update from SMART at council in some time. So it's great that you came and gave us that update, and certainly encourage you to come back whenever you can, more often, and update us. We're obviously probably, I guess, the largest single contributor to SMART saving, except possibly for Hanover. I can't remember if Hanover is contributing more than us now, but obviously we're a big player within the system. I remember I was on council, the deputy mayor was as well when we joined SMART. It must have been a little over 10 years ago now, and it's been encouraging to see that partnership grow and that serve people across our community successfully over all these years. And I think, as the Vice Deputy Mayor raised, it's a good time now with the work that Bruce County is doing to think about how we're going to look at transit in the future more holistically. I think that door-to-door service that SMART provides is a really critical piece. It's something that a conventional transit system doesn't do. SMART does do, and it's really important for people with accessibility needs. So I think we want to retain that, but perhaps we can retain it in the context of a broader system. I think one thing I would say, just to be real clear, I do not envision and cannot envision a scenario where this costs us less money. Right? Transit will cost governments more money. It's always cost governments money, and it will be a cost that will increase as we increase the service. That doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't do it. But I think we have to recognize that, particularly in rural communities where the population is widely spread out and dispersed, government support from municipal and provincial and federal governments is probably going to be necessary to make it viable. So we're having those discussions at the county level. I'm glad you're part of them. And I just want to conclude by saying thank you to SMART, your board, and yourself for all the work you do for the people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, so we'll move on then. That's the last of our delegations. And we'll go on to reports of municipal officers and committees, and 8.2, several staff reports there. And the first one is on the Town of Saugeen Shores 2023 Strategic Plan Phase 3. And we'll turn that over to, I guess, the Manager of Strategic Initiatives to begin.
Yes, thank you. One of the major initiatives for the Office of the CIO this year is to refresh the town's corporate strategic plan. Strategy Core was retained to lead the plan's development through 4 phases of work. Phase 1 and 2 undertook a situational review, including an environmental scan, SWOT, gap analysis, a council priority setting workshop, and interviews with council and senior staff. Phase 3 involves the development and presentation of the draft framework. The next steps are to facilitate public engagement and feedback. Representatives from Strategy Core are here tonight to present the draft framework. So please welcome Chris Laredo on the screen there, principal, and Olivia Lehay is also in there for backup.
Great. Thanks, Jill, and through you, Mr. Mayor. It's great to be back with council. And so as Jill mentioned in her presentation, this is a follow-up to share the output from the last time we were together. I think it was in April to put where we did a strategic planning workshop. And so the focus tonight is to present to you the strategic plan architecture that has been developed and that came out of that workshop, and to get councilors' feedback on the draft plan. And then once there's a level of comfort, taking the ideas that are presented here tonight out to staff within the organization, and then to the community more broadly, to get their feedback for the purposes of validating the thinking that came out of the workshop, but also perhaps challenging it in some respects and helping us to refine the thinking. And that will involve bringing the feedback from the community and from staff within the organization back to council, along with some recommendations as to where elements of the plan might be strengthened as well. In terms of the presentation, I will focus on this slide here, which I'll put it in the slide mode for you, which really sets out the strategic plan on a page for the municipality. In terms of everything here is from vision, mission, values through to 4 strategic pillars and associated core directions that will be the focus over the next number of years to actually fulfill the goal statements that are under each of the strategic pillars. In terms of the workshop and the discussion around the vision and mission, it was really focusing in, if you'll recall, on shortening the statements and really cutting to what it is we mean. So in terms of where we see, how we see Saugeen Shores continuing to grow and evolve, the ideal is that Saugeen Shores is an active, healthy, culturally vibrant, and naturally beautiful place to live and grow. And so a lot of the key concepts that were in the vision statement under the previous plan continue to be inherent in this vision. It's just shorter and I think a little bit tighter in terms of the vision that is being set forth for the future of the community and what the municipal administration, along with council, is working towards. The mission for the organization, and you'll recall, the mission is what the organization does on a day-to-day basis to achieve the vision and ultimately to work together to deliver on the strategic pillars and the directions that I'll address in just a second, is that council and administration works together to provide high-value municipal policies, programs, services, and assets that allow the town's residents, its businesses, its visitors, and community organizations to flourish. So putting in place the conditions for the community to be strong and to grow, and for it to have a rich quality of life. Underpinning everything that you do in terms of achieving the vision, delivering on the mission, and executing the strategic pillars and directions that are set forth are a core set of values that are intrinsic to how we engage with each other, and how we the important frames that we apply in deciding how we're going to go about delivering the services that we deliver to the people of Saugeen Shores. And there are 5 principles that came out of the workshop, a refined set of principles, or refined set of values for the organization. The organization is a people-centered organization that strives to put respect for the citizen at the center of everything that it does and how it does it. It's an organization that values collaboration and is collaborative, and that means working collaboratively with each other within the four walls of the municipal administration and council, and extending that to working with stakeholders in the community to overcome barriers and drive solutions to the needs of the community. Another value is the value of creativity or being creative, and that is about always seeking opportunities to generate, to share, and to innovate around the ideas and the services that are delivered to help to help the community achieve the vision. Another value is inclusive or inclusivity, and that's about the belief that diversity, inclusion, and equity are critical to building a community where all are welcome, respected, and empowered. And then these aren't numbered in any particular order, but the last value on the right hand of the slide here is stewardship. And that's about being responsible for our natural environment and heritage today and for future generations. And so those values are what guide us in the decisions and the services that the organization delivers on behalf of stakeholders in Saugeen Shores. Coming out of the workshop as well were four strategic pillars with a focused set of strategic directions to be pursued over the course of this term of council in order to deliver on the goal statements under each of the pillars. Starting with the pillar on the left-hand side of the screen here, is around growing a complete community. There was a lot of discussion at the strategic planning workshop a couple of months ago. And the goal that is being articulated here to summarize that conversation and the direction that is being set here is that the town will develop, implement, and sustain public policies, programs, services, and assets that promote a complete community with the right mix of services and amenities to meet current and future residents' basic needs and well-being. And so in creating that complete community, two areas of focus or directions of focus over the next number of years include diversifying and growing the town's housing stock and ensuring that there's a diversity of housing needs that are met through a diverse housing stock, and promoting business growth and investment. So continuing to be a place that supports business formation in the community and continues to attract business investment from outside the community to the community itself. The next pillar is building valued relationships. And this is the goal statement here is really about the town working to continue to be a partner and convener with local and regional stakeholders, First Nations partners, and other levels of government to promote private and public investment in the town's quality of life. So having the relationships in place that allow you to be successful in all of the other pillars here, but also ensuring that you have strong government to government relationships with First Nations to facilitate truth and reconciliation, to create new bonds in relationships that are mutually beneficial. And I think this goes to some of the discussion you're going to have tonight on, and the pre-delegation earlier around e-Procure as an example of a tangible initiative that helps support the strong government to government relationships with First Nations partners. And the second piece is around strengthening engagement and advocacy with other levels of government, knowing that there are many things that are affecting the community and how it's going to evolve and the quality of life that is on offer in Saugeen Shores that are outside of your jurisdiction or outside of your full control as a municipality. So housing, healthcare, social services, things of that nature requires the town to have strong relationships with other levels of government and being a constructive problem solver, but also an effective advocate to make sure that there is appropriate government attention and resources invested in those things that the community needs. And so that's what this pillar is focused on, and what those two strategic directions are anticipated to develop. The third pillar is around fostering a vibrant place to live and to visit. The goal statement here is that the town will work with local businesses and community organizations to further develop Saugeen Shores' natural, social, and cultural vibrancy to attract both new residents and also to continue to attract the visitors to the community. And there are three core directions that are anticipated to be pursued to realize this goal statement and that is being articulated under this pillar. One is around growing local arts, culture, and recreation, putting plans and partnerships in place in supporting community-based actors to continue to make that a reality, attracting new Canadians and their talents to Saugeen Shores, and promoting Saugeen Shores as a place for newcomers to come and settle, raise their families, find a good paying job, and to contribute to the community. And then there's work and a direction around protecting the natural heritage and beauty of the town's environment. So continue to be a place where you can be part of a complete community and be surrounded by nature in a strong and clean environment that can be enjoyed, and all that comes with that benefit. The final pillar here is around building the best municipal team for our residents, and this is really around municipal excellence in both the operations and the kind of place that Saugeen Shores is as an employer on the administration side. And the goal statement here is around having the town continue to deliver service excellence through long-term planning, an inclusive team environment, and proactive community engagement. And there are two core focuses here, one around a people strategy that is about attracting and retaining top quality talent, and by continuing to build an inclusive team and a strong team culture within Saugeen Shores, within the administration. And the second is to around continuing to foster and celebrate and pursue a culture of and a program associated with that of continuous improvement in municipal operations and services. And so from the strategic reviews that you've undertaken and implemented to the ones that you will in the future, but also what you do through budgeting and business planning, and the increased visibility you have on municipal performance through your performance management framework. This is all about continuing to make this a priority so that you're always doing the very best with the scarce resources that you have at your disposal, that the public entrusts you with to deliver on high quality services and programs to the community. At the end of the day as well, in terms of making all of this happen, there are a number of levers that you have to pull and to rely on as a municipality in order to achieve the strategic directions and the goals that are set out here, and ultimately deliver on the vision and be successful in doing what you do on a day-to-day basis in terms of your mission. And that is around continued operational excellence, having the high quality talented staff at all levels of the organization, having the right strategic partners and partnerships in place to advance things, particularly where there's shared interest and requirement for collaboration and shared work and delivery, advocacy, performance measurement, and having the data associated with performance measurement in order to make data informed decisions and to assess and evaluate how you're progressing against plans, including your strategic plan, and then having strong governance in place as is represented around the council table here in terms of overseeing this plan and making sure that everything that comes forward to that table is aligned with what is important from a strategy perspective, and or adapting the strategy over time in order to ensure that you're taking advantage of opportunities and you're learning from things as you go along, so that you're in the very best possible position to continue to deliver on behalf of your residents. I'll finish here, Your Worship, just before we turn it over for feedback and comment, that there's oftentimes a question to say, well, we've got a lot of plans and we got a lot of policies and we set priorities through our budgets and we have business plans, things of that nature. So tell me, how does a strategic plan and the various other plans and policies that the municipality has, how do they fit together? Well, the municipal strategic plan really is about setting direction, and it's through the master plans, the business plans, the annual budgeting that you do, and the annual departmental work plans that are put together that you fulfill that direction and you put the detail necessary in place in order to deliver on the direction that's set out in the plan. And so it sits on top, and while you may have things that are developed and there may be some misalignment in terms of overall timing for what gets done when, it all needs to be seen as iterative and informing, making sure that everything is informing the other plans and priorities that you set in place in order to be successful in delivering your strategy. So I'll stop right there, and Your Worship, happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a recommendation the council receive the Town of Saugeen Shores 2023 Strategic Plan Phase 3 report for information. Are there questions or comments from members? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you. Thank you very much for the report. There's quite a few references to people in here. The people-centered part is one of the pillars, but there's also references to different kinds of stakeholders and also about proactive community engagement and just about us making sure that we're responding to not just the needs of the community, but the desires, I guess, and goals of the community. I'm somewhere in here, I read that there's going to be some key community stakeholders consulted. One of my questions is, who are those key community stakeholders? And then there's also a reference to on-site engagement at various locations for the general public. And is there an anticipated timing for that? We're already in the middle of July. And do you have a sense of the timing of follow-up engagement with the community? I'll end my other comments before you answer with, I appreciate all of the ideas that are in here. And I'm hopeful that somewhere in there's a sense that in inclusivity includes all age groups. We certainly have on this council for many years talked about youth activities, youth initiatives, the need for youth centered programming, also senior activities, senior centered programming. So, I didn't pick up on those two particular words in there, but I think they're in there. I also picked up a lot on about attracting new business, attracting new people. There certainly is an existing population here that's worthy of great value. And we can't forget that, those folks already have invested here. So it's not necessarily always about the next thing. It's about making sure that the thing that's here is well taken care of too. I also hope that I just haven't read it in the way that it's intended, but there's reference to service-based plans along the way in the business plan, the master plan suite. There's a whole suite of quality of life plans too that, design guidelines and the cultural stuff, that doesn't necessarily fit in a service kind of plan, but I'm hopeful that somewhere they're in there too. I applaud the idea of proactive community engagement. So I guess I'll go back to my questions about, who are the key stakeholders there? Because I think every resident, every taxpayer, every person who lives here is a key stakeholder. But how are those key stakeholders being determined? And what's your sense of the on-site various locations to the general public? What's your sense of the timing related to that? Thank you.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for the question. So in terms of the engagement, what we have planned now is a few things. One is to make sure that we have a broad-based digital survey that everybody in the community can have access to and provide input and feedback that way. We're also looking at potentially using social media engagement as another way of encouraging the broader public participation in providing feedback to this draft plan. We're proposing to conduct a virtual town hall as well, and where we'll use a tool to capture public input. We have done this once or twice, most recently and successfully in the town of Muskoka Lakes, where we had excellent turnout and people were able to participate virtually in a town hall setting, and it yielded great results. We're also looking to leverage and piggyback on existing public events or high traffic areas to facilitate 2 or 3 in-person pop-up events within the community, so that we are face-to-face with folks and meeting folks where they're at, as opposed to leaning on them remembering the digital link or finding time in their calendars to participate in a virtual town hall. And this is something that we do quite successfully in a number of other communities. So whether that's, existing festivals where we can, find some space and approach people and encourage them to engage with us, where we basically use the same questions as would be in the digital surveys to get their feedback, or some sort of truncated version of that. We're working with Jill and communications after tonight to figure out what will be ideal pop-up event opportunities. And so any feedback from council would be helpful as well. But I would anticipate looking at opportunities over August and September in order to be able to hit up those things. And so that's what we have planned from a community engagement perspective. We're also proposing to do a digital survey for all staff to have input into the plan, as well as departmental drop-in sessions where department heads can check in with their staff and get their feedback directly on what's in the draft plan and the elements therein, in order to get their feedback, as they'll be essential folks in executing the plan at the end of the day.
Okay, are there further comments from members? Councilor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I have received some questions from the president of the Southampton Residents Association. He being a Southampton resident, I thought I'd ask the questions here. He points out that under values, there is in stewards a mention of heritage. That is the only mention of heritage other than natural heritage. And he believes that the town should also be responsible for our built heritage, the heritage we have now and the heritage we may discover in the days and weeks ahead. Does this fit into the strategic overview for the future?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what I would say is that's exactly the kind of feedback that we're looking for, Councillor, from the public when we take this out. And it's great that the president of the Southampton Residents Association had an opportunity to engage with the material that was made public and provide that feedback. So we'll take that back and include that, and any additional feedback that he or others will have will be there will be given ample opportunity through the public engagement around the strategy.
Another question I have here, Mr. Mayor, under strategic pillars and directions, tile, fostering a vibrant place to live and work, is focused on attracting new residents and visitors. He thinks it's important for the strategic framework to serve current residents as well. He supports managing appropriate growth, but feels growth as an end in itself does not need to be a goal. He says, I note that under the goal of building a complete community, the need for affordable housing is extended to current and prospective residents. Would you have any comment on that, sir?
Same comment through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. The same comment would be, this is helpful input, and we'll take that back and it would encourage additional thoughts that he and others may have to submit that through the public engagement process as well, so that we can factor that in, bring back a report, and would make recommendations around refinements or revisions that would be necessary to this draft plan for council's consideration.
Appreciate the answers. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like we're going to get this back possibly in a slightly altered form, and we'll have a chance to debate it at that point before finally voting on a final document. So more discussion on this to come. Is there anything further? I don't see anything. Well, thanks for all your work. I think this is a really good first stab at this to send out to the public for comment. So we'll look forward to hearing from the public, and we certainly encourage all members of the public to participate in the public consultation. I'm sure that our staff and you, Chris, will be making statements to the public about when and where and how they can expect that consultation to occur. So folks can look forward to that.
Absolutely.
With that, yep. So thank you. So with that, you've heard the recommendation, and we'll ask all in favor of that. And that is carried. Okay. So now we're on to the second report, which is here, the 2023 major initiatives and division highlights. Q2 update and CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're now over halfway through the year, which seems to be moving at light speed, and so much is happening in our community and within our organization. Because there's so much great work being done at the town, I'd like to pull a few key highlights from my report tonight for council and the public. However, I encourage everyone to read the full report to see how much work is being accomplished. A quick reminder for those listening and for council that this is an update from the goals we presented in our 2023 business plan. It covers 44 major initiatives, including those from the police service. And these are the big projects that move our community forward. We also have 69 division highlights, which are initiatives that improve our services within divisions like finance and public works. And finally, we have 46 capital highlights, which are our ongoing infrastructure projects. I'm happy to report that we are trending at about 53% completion rate for our major initiatives, 44% for our division highlights, and capital highlights are around 46% as we move into our busy construction season. I wanted to start tonight by highlighting a few pieces from community services and operations, and specifically the work that they did in partnership with the Municipal Innovation Council to launch the Food Cycler Waste Diversion Pilot Program this year. The town distributed 300 units to residents who will directly provide food cycle science with data on how they are using these units to divert organic waste from our landfill. In 2023, our spring tree sale was another great success where we sold 229 trees. Because of some issues with refunds and proper allocation of household orders, we currently have $7,000 remaining in that budget. So staff are working with representatives from Saugeen to look at a fall tree sale program to use those remaining funds. It seems like winter was a long time ago, but just wrapping up, our sponsored skate program was a great success as well. Local businesses sponsored 84% of the available public skates. This generous support meant people could enjoy public skating at the Coliseum and Community Complex free of charge. In February, the town received a 100% rating from the province on our annual drinking water system inspection. We want to recognize the dedication of the Ontario Clean Water Agency and their staff for providing safe operations of our municipal drinking water system. After this year's budget passed, staff have been meeting with local cricket players to establish a cricket field in Saugeen Shores. This field will be an informal recreation area until the town establishes a need for more formal programming, and it's located at the corner of Bruce and Joseph Streets in Port Elgin beside the Beaner Ball Diamonds. I think we're having an evening on Thursday where we're congratulating everyone on that work that went into opening that cricket field. Fleet availability and tender awards have proven to be a challenge since the pandemic. We anticipate that we'll finally receive 2 new tandem plow trucks approved in last year's budget late this summer in advance of this year's winter season. And the second quarter is also our high season for development services departments, especially the planning team. I want to recognize the work that's been done in updating the housekeeping of the zoning bylaw and also the development of urban existing neighborhood design guidelines, as well as the signing of an agreement to transfer $75,000 to Bruce County to supplement the municipal housing allowance program. Our engineering division is leading several construction projects, including work on Concession 6 for Innovation Park, the rehabilitation of Lewis Street, and the Arlington Street sidewalk. They've also started McNabb Street and Highway 21 intersection control study and the municipal facility condition assessment, as well as they're looking at Shebingnagon Bridge investigation. We can also tell you the town has awarded all of its fleet tenders. With the recent approval of a new building or new apartment building in Port Elgin, this has bumped the numbers up for our building department and our new residential units to 134. This is over 30% higher than the same point in 2022. This highlights the impact that a single multifamily development approval can have on overall housing supply. And we expect the approval of more apartment buildings in the remainder of 2023. The bylaw team had a productive Q2 with council approving the revised animal control bylaw to increase dog access to the waterfront. And I've seen a lot of posts over the last coming weeks with how hot it's been of people enjoying that. In our fire services, our team has been well on fire. The Community Risk Assessment Coordinator is completing the Community Comprehensive Risk Assessment. The assessment template is complete and a report will be presented to Council in Q4 that identifies gaps and using the Community Risk Reduction Plan model plan. Fire Services will then be sending that on to the Ontario Fire Marshal well ahead of the July 1st, 2025 requirement. The department has also done a thorough assessment of firefighter certifications, and Chief Mellison's team has also worked with HR to create job descriptions that include those required certifications. The departmental training policy now contains a plan to complete the mandated certifications needed for 2026. The Public Education Division recruiting has seen 3 members successfully hired into the Suppression Division, and these are promotions of 2 officers to manage the divisional activities. External recruitment just closed and interviews are scheduled to fill the 3 remaining positions. Our Firefighters Award Night is scheduled for October 14th in Rotary Hall, so I ask all of council to put that date in their calendar. We've ordered the long-term service medals from the province and federal governments for those with 20 and 25 years of service respectively. We've also booked the caterer and sent a save the date to everyone, so you should have that well in advance. On behalf of Saugeen Shores Police Services, I just want to note that they've seen a 32% increase in incidents over the same period in 2022. The volume, severity, and complexity of calls are increasing while demands for services remain high. There's been a 47% increase in charges over the same time of period in 2022. The service has launched the Bicycle Patrol Program and currently has 5 members trained under the Law Enforcement Bicycle Association. When staffing allows, these members deploy on bicycles to provide additional coverage on trails, parks, and beaches that are not commonly accessed through patrols. Thank you to the Southampton Rotary and Martin's Bicycle Shop for the generous donation in making this program such a success. Through the problem-oriented policing initiative, the service is deploying members on a variety of dedicated patrols to assist in identified concerns in Saugeen Shores when staffing and calls for service are low. This includes beach patrol, bylaw enforcement, commercial motor vehicle enforcement, offender management, ride programs, and community response and engagement. To keep pace with growth and call volume, the Saugeen Shores Police Service is in the process of hiring a new cadet recruit that will attend the college in August 2023. Behind the scenes, our corporate services department continues to find efficiencies and plan for our future. They've begun an aggregation of software licensing as part of the 2024 budget preparation, and they reviewed the software platforms and will incorporate their findings into our 2024 business plan to propose allocations for those related departments. Our health and safety new platform is now launched with HR working with IT to add content as we move forward. An accredited third party recently completed the consulting for IT security audit, providing us with detailed reports and recommendation, and council will see a high-level summary of that later this year. More people are using the town's online forms and e-commerce options. This includes several forms from finance and building services, and our operations and public works groups also plan to set up forms to make our services more available and more flexible for our residents. Staff have received the business plan timeline, and we're starting to work on our 2024 business plan, and council members received a summary of that timeline at the June 26th committee meeting. In tandem with that, the Office of the CAO through the strategic initiatives, as we just heard, is refreshing our corporate strategic plan. This is an overarching document that defines the town's philosophical direction and priorities for this council term. The strategic initiatives team also is working on the town's advocacy efforts with other levels of government. And this recently included working with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the Coast Guard to help expedite the lease extension for Chantry Island. This has allowed continued tours in advance of our high tourist season. Another big file that Strategic Initiatives is working on is the healthcare and physician recruitment file. And the province has launched an expression of interest as it looks to expand and enhance interprofessional primary care teams. The town is supporting 2 applications. One is in the form of Kincardine Health Team in coordination with our Saugeen Shores physician, and the other is the Victorian Order of Nurses. Economic Development has been busy executing on the Welcoming Communities Action Plan as it was presented to council, and this includes supplying 40 businesses with pride decals to display in their windows. Q2 also saw the first ever joint meeting between Saugeen First Nation Chief and Council with senior staff and our Mayor, Council, and leadership team. This whole group attended a workshop of the Community Economic Development Initiatives. HR has steered another class successfully through the town's Leadership Excellence Achievement Program, and that ended in April. This training supports a common leadership language at the town of Saugeen Shores and skill development for our staff. In total, we've had 44 employees successfully complete this training program, and the next cohort will start in September. Existing staff members of the Staff Ambassador Group are poised to meet for a brainstorming session later this month. This group will draft a project charter to reimagine the staff ambassadors for review in August, and the project charter will define the group's purpose and scope and give structure to how they will participate and move forward staff-led initiatives at the town of Saugeen Shores. It's fitting to note the end of this summary is to mention our staff. It's a very busy time of year for all of us, and I continue to be amazed by the town's staff, seasonal and full-time. We have many seasonal staff out there making our town beautiful, supporting our tourist camps, our harbor, and our recreational areas. And then, of course, those that help us with the influx in the office in engineering, GIS, Public Works, and Finance. I just want to close with a shout out to all of these wonderful staff that help us run the town of Saugeen Shores through these busy months of May to September. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for that. And so we have a recommendation. The council receive the 2023 major initiatives and division highlights Q2 update report for information. Are there questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor.
I had a fair number of comments and a few questions. I'll try and run through them quickly here. First of all, Kara, thank you for the report. The quarterly reports I find are extremely helpful, and pass on thanks to all staff involved with writing the report, because it's so helpful. I'm really impressed with the 44 employees who have successfully completed the talent development of emerging leaders program, and with a new cohort scheduled to begin in September. Kara, that's just fabulous, and it's a lot of work and time involved, and people are buying into that program, and I think they really do need to be commended for that, because it's over and above the call of duty, and so congratulations to them. It's great stuff. The food recycler program, I just wanted to say thank you, Councillor Grace. That's a great program. I was fortunate to get in on one of the units, and forgive me to those people in the community that didn't get them. I probably shouldn't have, but I did, because I wanted to test it. And I was doing a bag of garbage a week, and now it's one bag of garbage every 3 to 4 weeks. Seriously, and so I guess we use a lot of produce, a lot of peelings and things, but it's just an excellent way of diversion from the waste going into our landfill site. It's a great program. So thank you, Councillor Grace. It's been very worthwhile, and it's good to see people are using that service. I'm really delighted. I stopped by the cricket field the other night and watched them play the game of cricket, and it's a fascinating game. It's a good way to use that piece of land at Beaner temporarily, no doubt, but hopefully we'll find a permanent home for cricket people in our community. It's a very diverse community. We've a lot more people moving in that enjoy that sport, so that was great to see staff and Kristen and Frank and everyone involved there. That's a good initiative. I just wondering about and this is to Mark, Polly, I just wondering about the engineering study to you, Mr. Mayor, to Mark. It talked about the engineering study for the collection of warrants for the roundabout at McNabb Street. And I guess my question to you, Mark, would be, to you, Mr. Mayor, is, I've had a fair number of comments from people saying, please don't do that. We absolutely need traffic lights at that corner. And then you get the other people saying they love the roundabout idea. And so it's, is it split? But I'm getting a lot of people saying, why are we doing a roundabout there? So the monies we're spending there, Mark, is that, so when the study's done in the collection of warrants through the MTO, you talk about a roundabout study, but in that same study, will the warrant speak to the need for a roundabout versus traffic lights versus doing nothing? Like you only speak about roundabout. There's not much mention about traffic lights. So how does that work? Can you explain how that?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, it's exactly that question that led us to actually retitle the project in these reports to say intersection instead of roundabout, to reflect the fact that the study is going to look at all the options for the intersection to improve it, starting with the collection of data, which recently occurred, the updating of models, the updating of development information, and then they will look at, the engineers we've hired will look at, they will evaluate a number of options. There's a straw man, which is do nothing. There may be intersection improvements. Roundabout would be an option that's evaluated. Signalization is an option that will be evaluated. And those will be compared against each other for a number of different parameters like safety, functionality, etc. And those will be evaluated in a report that we'll bring to council in the fall, and will be also the subject of a public information center in the later part of August.
Thanks, Mark. And the collection of the data, and sometimes those reports are, the warrants are collected in April, May when the roads aren't that busy. But were the warrants collected during a busy time? Was it done on a weekday, a weekend, during the summer? When was the information collected? Were the cameras there talking about near misses? What was all collected and when?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can speak to the timing, which was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of last week.
Oh, good.
The exact methodology of how they collected it, cameras versus on-site people, I don't know for sure what the method was.
Thank you. This next question is to Mr. Mayor, through you, to the building department. I've just talked about more apartment buildings are expected to be approved the remainder of 2023. It's great to see the 185 units, various construction. It's well underway and looking at renting, I think, next July. So 85 more rental units being put onto the market, which is a good thing. And you talked about more apartment buildings expect to be approved in the remainder of 2023. Are we close? We talked about that 330 units behind Mary Rose. Where are we with that development for new apartments there? Could you tell me?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, are you talking about the Fuse apartment buildings?
Pardon me?
The Fuse apartment buildings, is that the one that you're?
I don't know
referring
about the
to?
name, but I know there's 330
The
units
modular,
behind
yeah.
Mary Rose.
I believe it's still in site plan control. We've looked at the drawings, so it's quite a long ways in the process.
And so it's a long ways, yeah. But that's more of a Jay Posner question, perhaps. But in that same line through you to the CAO, talked about permits were issued for the Cedar Crescent Village to get, and we continue to get lots of questions about CCV, of course. But where are we at with the permits for CCV with the town and SVCA? Could you just bring us up to date there, Kara?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe at end of April, I'm just going to look to my chief building official, we issued the building permit for phase 1 of the Cedar Crescent Village, and they have applied for the phase 2 building permit. We're doing a few further pieces back and forth with them, but it's in a good situation, and we anticipate probably in the next several weeks having issued that second building permit for second phase.
Okay, thanks for that update. And the last one, I think I got it right, but Mark, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mark again, or concession 6. We've talked about a connecting link for the trail system there for a lot of years. It's one missing link for our trail system from Gobles Grove up through kind of Route 25. It's a beautiful trail system up to the highway, but nothing from the corner to Saugeen Rail Trail. And I think I have the answer, but just for the members of the public benefit, I get lots of questions asked whether when that connecting link is going to be made. And Mark, what's the plan for the trail, the connecting link on concession 6? What are we doing there?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor. There will be a paved shoulder on the north side of concession 6, and the design of that is intended to accommodate 2-directional cycling traffic from the
Excellent.
Innovation Park internal road to Highway 21.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Two-way traffic. Thanks so much.
Okay, further comments? The deputy mayor?
Thank you. And through you, I also have quite a few, but I circled a couple to just highlight. On a first note, great to see public education showing up so prominently in the fire services report. I can also attest, as can Councillor Davinsky, that the police services is also engaging in much more public education to get messages out ahead of activity so that there's better compliance and also better understanding. So kudos to the fire department for that. A couple of things I just noticed as I read through the different highlights and initiatives and division reports. In development, there were comments that we were waiting for the county to update their official plan related to natural heritage before we move forward with some environmental activity here. I believe that has happened now. Is that correct? That they have got to a point where there's distribution of their update? Is that accurate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not to my knowledge. I think their work was delayed somewhat by some of the proposed changes in the provincial system. So I think that the timing for that's going to be fluid for a little while.
Okay.
That's I don't know
Yeah,
if
certainly. It's not going to
Mayor, you may
happen.
have more.
It won't happen before 2024. But that what's been circulated is the PPS updates to natural heritage, but the county's own work is delayed. I would say delayed into next year for sure.
Okay, so the province sends something to the county, but okay, I understand now. There's also a reference to the Port Elgin waterfront detailed design and about the creation of terms of reference. Is council going to be provided with opportunities to contribute to these terms of reference? I'm assuming it shows up as a Q3 thing, so we're in Q3 now. Will we see that ahead of it going out to an RFP process? Is that in the works?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, we can take direction from council. That wouldn't be our normal process to bring something like that, a terms of reference that would be included in an RFP to council, but we can take direction to do so from council.
Well, I'll think about that ahead of the next meeting. I think probably I had a question about the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Committee as to when we might see some activity there. And I guess maybe I'll just make a specific request that we add that to a striking committee agenda to move it forward, because I see it's in the Q3 category as well.
And we've been sorry, I just might respond to that. We've been discussing, had some early conversations with Councillor Grace about some concepts around that. So I think you will see it at the striking committee probably, in sometime in the third quarter this year, hopefully with some ideas around that. It's Councillor Grace, she mentioned it at her update coming out of her, the conference she was at in Chicago, as some ideas coming out of that, which I think will fuel a terms of reference for that committee.
I was on the one about 15 years ago, so I'm really excited that we'll have another one. There's reference also to an active park inventory having been completed. If I could request that council receive that information, and it talks about the passive park situation is to come. So just curious to see how that updated what was in the Parks and Trails Master Plan. There's also reference in one of the highlights to downtown development and about ongoing and continued activity with Port Elgin's BIA. I'm just wondering, was that I thought, we were engaging with Southampton BIA too, to kind of try and move along the streetscape planning. Is there two things happening with both BIAs? Because Southampton wasn't specifically mentioned, Port Elgin's BIA was.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not entirely certain of the reference. I'm assuming that's with Jill and her team in economic development, but we work with both the BIAs. So just an oversight that maybe we didn't mention Southampton.
just streetscape's been waiting a long time in Southampton too, so we have to keep talking about it. There's also a reference to a downtown parking strategy RFP going out. Has that gone out? Is it out there in the world now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that either has gone out or is on the verge of going out.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know. And there, I just, on page 3 of 15 in the division highlights, there's a very specific reference to a citizen survey. And I look forward to seeing more about how we're going to do that, when we're going to do that, and who's going to do it. We've certainly had some opportunities to learn about surveys over the last little while, and hopefully, you know, we're getting better and figuring out different ways to do things that engage. So it's good to see that in there. I look forward to hearing how we're actually going to do that. And I will pass the floor on to somebody else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments or questions from members? Councillor Grace and then Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kara, and thank you to all staff who have contributed to this report. It's a lot of work to organize this. It's very helpful to me, and I'm sure every member of council, to see this specific summary. Not to mention the summaries that you give us, I don't know, every couple of weeks on updates. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that haven't been mentioned already that by members of council. In the CIO's office, and also in community services and the mayor, the advocacy that you did to firm up the Chantry Island lease was just so important. It's such an important part of our culture. It's such an important part of our tourism in the summertime. So thank you for that. I'm also very pleased with the through the economic development team, the community's action plan, and the Pride decal distribution campaign, and the ceremony raising the Pride flag. That may seem like a small thing. It's not. It's a very, very important part of the culture of our community, and the fact that we are leaders in modeling that kind of tolerance and diversity. I'm really happy to see that idea about the fall tree sale, to use the remaining funds, because we know how incredibly popular that is in the spring. So that's exciting. I also wanted to give a shout out to the high school class who's continued Bud's strong legacy of that high school building class continuing on. In this case, the Peel Street Planters were mentioned, and that's a program that also I want to praise Frank Burrows, because Frank, for the last couple of years, has met with residents in that area to try to listen to, not just to try to, but to listen to and to respond to what they wanted to see there, the maintenance of the same sort of natural planter and design. And then the high school class brought that into being. And the other thing that was great about that is the Beach Toys pilot program in Port Elgin Beach. That was something that came from a Facebook post that somebody, member of the public, posted. Frank listened to that and then took it to Dominique, the teacher at the high school, and the kids came up with designs, and I understand that's now operating, and we'll see how it works this summer. But that was a great program, and once again shows the I think flexibility of our staff, and all of the community input. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the CAO for this terrific report. A lot of information to take in. I'll just start at the top. We mentioned the sponsored skate programs we have during the fall, winter, spring. I thought I read somewhere that not all of the skating time was sponsored. Is that correct? So my question is, how much does it cost to sponsor a skate program? Any idea? I don't even know who to ask. Kristen? No?
Okay.
Okay,
Judging by
I'm
the look
sorry.
on the director's face, I'm not sure we have the answer for that just at the moment.
I'm seeing
But I'm sure,
panic.
I'm sure we can get you that answer, Councilor Dubinsky.
Okay, sorry. And do we promote the fact that these unsponsored ones are unsponsored? And okay, sorry, I didn't. mean that. I've got here, although it wasn't talked about, but somewhere in this report is Moby mats, I believe. And I guess this would be through you, Mr. Mayor, to Kristen. We have the Moby mats and they can take us to the shore. Do we have a beach wheelchair?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we do not have a beach wheelchair that I'm aware of.
Okay, well then, and I'm not saying the town should look at that, but I hope the service clubs are listening. And that is a monster addition to this. And I know there were issues about where we store it and how we access it for our loved ones. So, but I think that's important that we work on the beach wheelchair. And just in what Vice Deputy Mayor Mike Myatt said, and through you to Mark, it seems to me months ago, we talked about the McNabb Street intersection with Highway 21. And someone said the first choice was stoplights, traffic control lights, but the province said, don't go that route because you probably won't get it. And you're better off to go the roundabout route. Am I missing something, or has the province backed off a bit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the way that I would explain it is that whatever the solution that is recommended to improve the intersection will ultimately be subject to MTO approval, Ministry of Transportation. And the design that they're going to support is going to depend on what the traffic modeling says is required. And that's where the word warrants gets into the conversation. There is a certain level of warrant that's required for a roundabout, and warrants are required to justify a light. So both solutions are technically challenging and would require a certain minimum level of traffic to justify them in the first place. And so this project will compare them against each other, as well as other maybe less significant changes to the intersection, and put that together into an analysis that we can follow through to a recommendation.
Thank you. So we're at a wait and see stage at this point in time then.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the project's in the analysis phase right now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments? Get the deputy mayor and then the vice deputy mayor.
Oh, I left my mic on. Sorry about that. I had another question related to the urban tree canopy plan. If we're waiting about the natural heritage policy review and some other things for the county to kind of get through their process, this hasn't impacted the timing of the urban tree canopy plan situation, which was slated to sort of show up later this year as well. Is it being pushed out further too?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that project is not affected by the pace of the county's official plan work or our official plan work. Yeah. It will probably generate some recommendations for us to potentially include in our official plan, but it's not delayed. Yeah.
Okay, Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, three things to you to Christian Schreider. Tried two things actually. The fall tree planting program I think is wonderful, and I just wanted Mr. Mayor for thank you letter, and I think hopefully Schreider will agree to this. But Jerry Lambert I think has done a tremendous amount of work. Schreider, is that correct? Like I talked to him a few months ago about, and I said, Jerry, who's doing all that planting? He said, I am, and with a group of 3 or 4 or 5 volunteers. Like he does a tremendous amount of work for this community as a volunteer. So I just wanted Mr. Mayor for thank you letter could go out to Jerry Lambert and the volunteers, Schreider, who do all that good work. If that's and then secondly, the Moby mat reminded me of questions I'm getting at Gobles Grove. It's wonderful Moby mat that goes from the John Cowles Parquet over to the washroom, right below the new barrier that we put in that wall. And the question I'm getting is for people in wheelchairs. Number one, there's no parking there to unload a vehicle onto the Moby mat, but secondly, is there a second mat going in that would take people from the existing mat to the waterfront? Because right now it's just a long strip. Is there a second mat still to go in?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So council approved $50,000 in the 2023 budget for the improvements on the water side of the retaining wall from the road construction. So the installation of the Moby mat that's adjacent to the armored stone wall is just the first phase of some of
I
those
see.
improvements. So I believe that we have another order of Moby mats on that will go to other sections of the waterfront as well. But I'll follow up with Frank with regards to extensions down to the lake
Oh,
down
that's-
there as well.
Well, that's perfect. Thanks so much. And there was sec here, my notes. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Don't say anything. Well, thank you for this report. Every time you read through this thing, you see more things that you forgot about, even though we created this business plan, voted for it, and now have seen it reported on several times. You keep going through it and going through it. And, oh man, look, there's something else I forgot we were doing. It's a huge list of stuff. And the best thing would be is if members of the public would have a look at it and read through it and see all this work that is going on. I think if folks are thinking about a thing that ought to be done, it probably is being done, and it's probably in this list. So certainly encourage all members of the public to have a look at this. And as I always say, hopefully this will be posted prominently somewhere with links on our website or other locations so folks can easily find it. But anyway, with all that, now you've heard the recommendation, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay, so now we're on to the third report, which is Community Services Review and Recommendations, the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2021, the town of Saugeen Shores committed to undertaking a municipal service delivery review. We hired Strategy Corp to complete that review, and in August 23rd, 2021, they completed the current state assessment. I noted some of the points from that assessment in my report for council and the public's awareness. And council will approve the municipal service delivery review implementation in November 2021 with a 2-year implementation plan. The approved restructuring was developed to modernize the town's organizational structure to better align roles and responsibility, improve staffing levels, and address gaps in service. It also positioned the town to be future ready for the growth that continues in our community. I also noted some of the notable changes there for council's information. In the 2021 approved organizational structure, it was noted that a review of community services would occur following the decision-making of the Aquatic and Wellness Center. Council made the decision for a municipally run Aquatic and Wellness Center on March 13th this year. And in that report, it acknowledged that we would have anticipated staffing requirements in order to support that model. With that, we hired Strategy Corp to complete that review of community services in the operations department. They were contracted to assess the personnel needs and to develop the recommended structure to integrate the Aquatic and Wellness Center staffing into the town's existing structure, evaluating alignment with current roles and functions in our organization. Additionally, Strategy Corp was asked to evaluate the entire department, adding additional responsibility and scope from the Aquatic and Wellness Center to this already large department was acknowledged as a challenge that needed to be reviewed. In the attachment to tonight's report, Strategy Corp did outline 3 options for council's consideration: 2 separate departments with a director over each. Option 2, 2 branches with associate directors, and option 3, associate directors layer with facilities and operations and an operation-focused parks team. Through the feedback from the director and the evaluation of Strategy Corp, it is recommended that option 1, 2 separate departments, be the recommended organizational structure for community services and operations going forward. Option 1 is preferred for the following reasons. It's the most fiscally responsible option with the addition of 1 new director. It minimizes the impact of the restructuring to specifically community services without introducing further disruption to other divisions that have already gone through change. It minimizes pressure within the association related to salary and title inflation and does not create an associate director ban in our non-salary grid. It balances the scopes of responsibilities at the director and manager level without overburdening, which is our current case. And it recognizes that the lack of previous coordination between parks and public works will be managed through collaboration and increased process improvement. If council supports the proposed path forward, which is recommended as option 1, council is being asked to approve the 2023 staffing costs, which are around $44,800. This would be to create the 1 new director position, as well as reprofile to create a park supervisor position within the organization. This would be funded out of 2023 staffing surpluses, and that the 2024 staffing costs would then be incorporated into the 2024 business plan in next year's budget. So the recommendation is in front of you today, Mr. Mayor and Council, to consider the creation of 2 separate departments as option number 1, and I'll leave the recommendation to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure. So it is recommended the council approve option number 1, 2 separate departments, community services and operations, organizational structure, including the immediate staffing requirements. And the council directs staff to return in Q3 with a transition plan and final costing estimate for the Aquatics and Wellness Center staffing implementation as outlined in option 1. Are there questions or comments to the Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And through you, option 1 is great. I'm fully supportive of that. I just want to make sure that I understand the way that you just mentioned about the financial aspects. So the element that would adjust the situation this year to accommodate some change before the end of the year would come from a staff surplus account or something. Anyway, then you say that something would then get built into the budget. Am I correct in reading into this that what we're doing here without the costing related to the Aquatic and Wellness Center staffing situation is about $250,000 in staffing additions that we're being asked to, it's not pre-budget approval, but we're being asked to just nod our heads and say, that's okay to go into the budget next year. It's about $250,000, right?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, by approving the model tonight, you're approving those 2 positions, so the Director of Operations position and also the Park Supervisor position. So you would be committing to those positions ongoing, so incorporating it into the 2024 budget and beyond. And then thank you for the question, because I forgot my little footnote in there, which is that the 2024 budget implications related to bringing on the Aquatic and Wellness Center will come back for council consideration. So it'll follow this model, but you'll see those numbers through the 2024 business plan.
Okay, further questions or comments? Seeing none, you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so now we'll move on to item 4, the Aquatics and Wellness Center Community Engagement Update and CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a while since I've had this many reports on the agenda, but this is the last one for tonight from me. I just wanted to bring a report tonight to council just to update you on the community engagement piece that we're going to do for the Aquatics and Wellness Center. We're using the term engagement instead of fundraising simply. So it is about fundraising for the Aquatics and Wellness Center, but it is looking at a broader program around community engagement for the Aquatic and Wellness Center. In May 2023, we noted that we hired the community engagement lead and community engagement coordinator for the town. So we have Caitlin Stone and Rob Stanley now on contract in order to support this initiative. The initial team that's working on this encompasses both those individuals as well as myself and the executive assistant. Right now, we're working on the planning and development stage, and we're looking forward to moving forward into implementation. And that is designed to happen when the shovel hits the ground in the Aquatic and Wellness Center here. So I've highlighted for council's information a number of the current tasks that are underway, and I'm happy to take any questions about those. And then it notes as we move into the next steps, what we'll be taking a look at. And as I said, we're looking at launching this campaign as the groundbreaking happens for the Aquatic and Wellness Center. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. So there is a recommendation that council receive the Aquatics and Wellness Center Community Engagement Update Report for information. Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to CAO. Kara, it's great to see fundraising campaign about to be launched. And I say about, whether it's September, October, November. So we're approaching that timetable. When do you see those first requests being made to the public for contributions to our wellness center? Would it be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? And have we set a target yet? 3 million, 4 million, 5 million? Have we got that far yet?
Thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd offer we haven't set that target yet. I think we all have numbers in our mind that are kind of in that ballpark. But again, we're going to put that strategy together. We'll come back to council with the details, but I did want to update you that it's being worked on.
No,
and
that's
we
fine.
plan to
But
move
I just,
forward.
in terms of the requests being made your asks, could it be as soon as September, do you think?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Right now, we are targeting with starting the engagement campaign when we break ground. So I'll kind of nod
Yeah, I
look
saw
over
that,
at the director here, but that's targeted for late August, early
For major
September.
asks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yep.
Okay, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And through you, this is also for probably the CAO. There's mention of the fact that the campaign will be orchestrated and implemented by a core campaign committee. Will that committee be struck to include a broad base of representation, much like the Lamont situation? And if so, if people are so interested, how can they indicate an interest? How are we going to arrive at that committee? Thank you.
Sure, thanks. We're working through you, Mr. Mayor. We're working through some of the details around that committee, but I would suggest if anyone's interested in participating on it, that they reach out to me and be happy to move that consideration forward.
Okay, further questions or comments? I don't see any. Well, thanks very much for this update. I was at a couple others were at the Southampton Residents Association meeting a few days ago, and there we heard an update or a presentation from Rob Stanley. The first time I've seen him do a presentation on this issue, and did a good job. And obviously, he's going to be a great representative for us there. And he immediately elicited support from the Southampton Residents Association, at least from the president of the Southampton Residents Association, who's a strong advocate for that organization's support for this project. So I think you can already see the ball rolling, but I think it's really important for us to remember that we need to put the pieces in place to make sure we do this well, right? We need to get the fundraising plan structured. We need to identify how much money we want to raise, identify what elements of the facility will have naming rights, how much those naming rights are worth. Council needs to approve all of that before we advance asking anybody for anything. So, so I think that that's an important step. We don't want to get out ahead of that process in any way. We want to make sure that we have a good plan, and we want to make sure this council's approved it, because we're the ones building this building, and we have to have the final sign off on what these elements might be worth in terms of a fundraising campaign. So I support this approach. Appreciate all the work that's going into it, and hopefully we'll be breaking ground pretty soon, because we have to be doing cannonballs for Christmas 2024. So, okay, you've heard the recommendation, and I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay, so that moves on to item 5, which is procurement options with eSupply Canada. We'll turn that over to the treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have much to add beyond what you heard earlier directly from eSupply Canada, but this report accompanies that earlier delegation. It outlines staff awareness of the offering, and purchasing staff will look at the option when procuring goods and supplies, and we'll reach out to eSupply Canada for further discussions on how their services may benefit the town.
All right, thank you. There's a recommendation. The council receive the procurement options with eSupply Canada report for information. Are there questions or comments to that report? Councillor Stack.
Thank you. I'm just curious if we have a plan to do more dedicated Indigenous procurement as part of our overall commitment to economic development. It's certainly something I'm interested in the future. So I'm just curious if that's on our radar.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. I wrote down on the sticky beside me tonight, Indigenous procurement policy. So thanks for reinforcing that.
Yeah, any further comments? Councillor Maya.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Along the same lines, I know with private corporations, it's easier for them to come up with policies around giving preferential treatment to Indigenous or any group for that matter, but in specific Indigenous suppliers and companies. But is that something that government or municipal or federal or anybody can really come out and say that we're going to give one ethnic group a preferential treatment when it comes to procurement over another? Is that something that we can do legally?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think I'm in a position to answer that tonight, so we haven't done any research into it.
Yeah, I think it's a thing that the Director of Corporate Services and working with the Treasurer will look at. I know we've talked about local procurement before and what the implications of that are. And so I think our Corporate Services Department will have a look at it, see what's allowable in legislation and what might be best for the municipality. Of course, we always have to remember in terms of any procurement that our ultimate responsibility is to procure at the lowest possible price for the taxpayer. So, but the great thing about eSupply Canada is they're a real competitive business. That's not a charity we're talking about here. We're talking about a local business that can compete. And so why wouldn't we buy from a local business if they are providing the best price for taxpayers? So I think that's where the advantage comes from. And I think it would be true with any local business that we would want to figure out ways to do business with them if they are the most competitive option for sure. So anyway, our corporate services staff, I know we'll have a look at it under the direction of the CAO, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it. Anything else on this? Seeing nothing, then all in favor of that? That's carried. All right, so now we are on to item 6, the audit planning report, and we'll turn that over to the treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report highlights that the 2022 financial audit is underway, and it includes the correspondence directly from our audit team at BDO to members of council. The letter outlines the details of the audit team, the process, and the responsibilities for each party. The processes, methodologies, and risks are similar to our audit process in prior years and similar to other similarly sized municipalities.
Thank you. So there is a recommendation the council receive the audit planning report for information. Questions or comments? Councilor Dubinsky.
Thank you. And through you, when do we usually get the final audited report coming back to council, Dan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this year we're looking at potentially September, potentially August, but likely September at this point this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anything further? I don't see anything. So all in favor? That's carried. All right, now we are on to item 7, the proposed clean yards bylaw and the manager building services chief building official.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an information report to introduce the clean yard bylaw process. We are trying to undertake we are trying to start a clean yard model bylaw for the town. Currently, we are a property standard bylaw right now, which governs the maintenance of yards. We would like to move that to the clean yard model. The benefit of the clean yard model is that it'll add an extra tool for the bylaw officer. They can lay tickets for like yard offenses. Currently, right now, the property standard bylaw is governed by the building code. So they can only go on to they have to issue an order and clean the property. This will add that extra tool for the bylaw officer. With that, with the new proposal, we have a chance to look at all the provisions. Many of the provisions will stay the same. Derelict cars, things of that nature will remain the same. One new area that was flagged was to introduce naturalized lawns. That is something that we are going to look at with the new draft of the new bylaw. So The next steps is we are going to draft the bylaw and bring the draft to council. Thank you.
Okay, very good. There is a recommendation the council receive the proposed Clean Yards bylaw report for information. Questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Josh. I am delighted to see this work in the offing. And I'm particularly happy about the possibility of adding naturalized front yards or backyards or whatever to our definition of what a yard should be, because we're way past the formal rolling lawn definition we should be. And just for instance, if you talk in your report about the Ontario Weed Control Act, and I know that that's in our property standards bylaw now, even that, I mean, the main purpose of that, as I understand it, is to protect agriculture. And so you can see the practical reason why you would have a noxious weeds list, but milkweed used to be on that list. And now it fortunately isn't, because it's the main sustenance for the monarch butterfly. And so I think it's terrific that we're doing, it's really critical for us, I believe, to update our bylaw to include allowing people who want to grow pollinator gardens to do that. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I echo those comments. I'm really happy to see that coming along, the naturalized lawns, and I think it's time. And I also think it's fair because, if people want to have a manicured golf-like, type lawn, you're still free to have that, right? I mean, so I think this is just a good way to accommodate people. My question, Mayor, and through you is that, do you see a time where the town could start to have more naturalized lawns in some of its park spaces? For instance, just leaving a few feet, 6 feet around the edge of some of our park areas where we just currently have a lot of mowed lawn. And that would just provide a nice little buffer zone. And do you see that as a possibility? Thank you.
Turn it over to the CEO.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I know my background's in landscape architecture, so my lawn will finally be legal with this. So I'm very excited about that. I think there's been great examples of where communities can naturalize spaces. I think one of the pieces we would have to think about, where I've seen it and it's been successful, is there's been signage that accompanies it, right? So that we don't get the complaints. But I have seen really nice signage that's done like, this is a natural habitat, or this is a bee pollinator friendly garden, like that kind of thing. So I think it's definitely something that we can take a look at. And I think our bylaw division and building division's on the right track with this. And, as we see it move forward, we'll have all kinds of ideas to implement it.
Okay.
Thank you.
The Deputy Mayor.
I was going to say what Bud said, but through you, we did come up with a good plan on a drive back from a conference, the three of us, that the area around the water tower in Southampton that's fenced, you just need a track into the ladder, and you could just fill that with lovely wildflowers. So there's an idea for you. I wanted to just confirm, and by the way, Kara, I think my lawn would, I took that no mow May right through June, and I just cut the little bit of grass at my dad's place on the weekend, and people thought I got rid of some of the garden. No, that's where the lawn is. Anyway, I wanted to make sure I understood this. The Clean Yards bylaw, at one point it says it would replace the existing property standards bylaw, but then at the end it says it should be noted that the property standards bylaw will still be used for the overall maintenance of buildings. So will there in fact then be still a property standards bylaw and a new Clean Yards bylaw that there'll be distinct opportunities in each in terms of goals that we have for the way the community looks? Is that the idea, that both of them will be there?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the property standards bylaw will remain. It will be mainly for the governing of buildings and the standards for that, for the property standard. The yard section of the property standards will be removed and replaced with that separate clean yard bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Stack.
Thank you. I just kind of a comment to make sure whatever the bylaw ends up, we consider doing a warning system. I know there are, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, there are certain instances in which lawns are a reflection of socioeconomic limitations on what people have access to in terms of disposal of items on the lawn. So I'm certainly in support of ensuring there's sort of clean yards in our community, but I just ask that we consider a warning system so that there's not automatically fines assigned. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you'll find that our bylaw enforcement officers already do that and have offer, in my experience, a fair bit of leeway to folks to get their properties in order before fines are levied. Are there any further comments or questions? I don't see any. Well, I appreciate this. I've done a few presentations lately where I mentioned our work on this, and this is always met very positively by members of the community. I think people in the community are keen to see us particularly implement those pollinator gardens as mentioned by Councillor Grace, and or at least create opportunity for people to implement them themselves. So I think it's time for this change, and looking forward to seeing your work on it as you get that bylaw developed. So you've heard the recommendation. I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay, now we're on to item 8, which is fire services, marine service provision, and the fire chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Believe it or not, it's been a year tomorrow since I started untangling the water rescue for Saugeen Shores. It is by far my largest file on my desk. This is the third report that surrounds this complicated topic for council's consideration. The first was the Water Rescue Services Status Report, September 26th. The second, the regulatory bylaw allowing water rescue other than strictly shore-based. And finally, this report that speaks to marine rescue using a boat. Saugeen Shores is in a unique situation where it is one of the most beautiful lakes on one of the most beautiful lakes on the planet and has some of the nicest beaches in the world. With this comes people, and with people come emergency situations involving the water. As the report details, we have response partners that are more than willing to help to assist us, but for many reasons, the response time is hampered by distance and resources and needs to be augmented by the fire department if we want to truly have a chance to save some people. By defining nearshore and offshore rescue zones, creating operational guidelines for marine response, and using assets that the town already has in its possession, the number of calls and the risk to our firefighters will be limited. Our firefighters are adamant that they want to help and are very happy to take on the Transport Canada and NFPA training required to respond quickly and safely with the 14-foot inflatable and the Peerless 2, both in our municipality and our Saugeen First Nation and municipal neighbors. Since Saugeen Shores has and will have invested significantly in both assets and people, the final recommendation speaks to cost recovery for supplying marine rescue for those that ask for it in the form of service or fire service agreements outside of our municipality. There is recommendations in front of you, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. So there's a recommendation that council approve an amending bylaw to update the establishing and regulatory bylaw 25/2023 to clarify the fire department's involvement in nearshore and offshore water rescue, and the council directs staff to advance an operating procedure with the Marine Heritage Society to clarify the use of the Peerless 2 for nearshore support and offshore Coast Guard water rescue, and that council directs staff to resume responding to neighboring municipalities for marine search and rescue responses under agreements that facilitate cost recovery. Questions or comments from members? We'll start with the deputy mayor and work our way down.
Thank you. And through you, I just want to thank the chief for all of his efforts on this big file on his desk, because hopefully we won't have to engage in these types of protective services very often, but it's real good that we're going to have some policies and procedures in place. I wanted to just make sure we were not in danger, but I was on the Peerless on the Chantry Island tour once when we did have to initiate a little rescue, and I was very grateful to see 2 firefighters come out there with the Zodiac and immediately take charge of the situation and get us back into shore. So that was a very good thing. There's reference to 1 kilometer offshore. So Chantry Island is usually referenced as being about 1 kilometer offshore. But of course, when you're coming out from the harbor, it is a little bit longer than 1 kilometer. So all of what we're doing here would mean that we're setting up the potential for Chantry Island to be covered in the 1 kilometer sort of situation and not go out beyond to the 3.5 kilometer range, right?
Through your, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, you're correct. It's Chantry Island is the 1 kilometer. So everywhere I look, Chantry Island's about 1 kilometer from shore. So that's what I used.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a great report.
Thank you, Councillor Davinsky then, and then Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's more a comment. Thank you, Chief, for the report. It says everything it should say, and I certainly will be supporting it. I can think of two young men, kayakers, who would support this over and over and over again, because they have just recently been rescued in our lake where the kayaks overturned, and the Peerless went out, and a salute to those that were on the Peerless at the time. The fire department, I believe, was involved as well. I'm not sure. And they rescued these two gentlemen and one of the kayaks. The other just came to shore on its own. So, but they're not from here. I believe they were from the Toronto area, but you can bet their ears are ringing tonight, because this was something that they'll talk about for a long time, and they will support, as will I tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. This is just a great thing, being someone who has a boat in Southampton and someone who's had to be towed to shore before. I think this is just really a great thing. Just a clarification, you said there'll be a cost recovery for other municipalities. Would there be a cost recovery to people being towed in? For instance, let's say I ran out of gas and I'm stuck out there. Is there a bill being presented to people who are rescued? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor, thank you very much for the question. I'm hesitant to say that we will be a tow company. We are in the business to rescue. If they are spending on their communications with Trenton, the Coast Guard JRCC, if they are safe and not in danger, we probably will allow the Coast Guard to take care of them. It all is going to depend on the report and how it goes. We certainly aren't going to leave somebody out there if it's negative, but we're not going to put our firefighters at risk either. So it's a how long is a piece of string sort of question.
Okay. Are there further questions or comments? Councillor Halpin, sorry.
I guess I'll wait for that final report and ask questions at that point. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Are there further comments? I just a couple of comments that I'll make. Certainly it's commendable, of course, that our volunteer firefighters are willing to do this work and leave the shore and to go off and help people. It's not surprising that they would do it because, of course, they are willing to help anybody anywhere and would go to the ends of the earth, I'm sure, to help somebody if they could. And certainly, I know the community is keen to do that as well. I think, though, it's important to remember that we're in the position of having to have volunteer firefighters do this because we're underserviced by the OPP and the Coast Guard, right? They're in the OPP is in Kincardine. Their volunteer firefighters don't have to go out in the water and do that work. The OPP does it there. And in Goderich and Tobermory, they got the Coast Guard doing that work. Wyerton, OPP is doing the work. And the people of Saugeen Shores are paying the OPP through their taxes to provide that service. And we have volunteer firefighters doing it here. So I don't think that's fair, honestly. I think that the OPP should be providing the service in Saugeen Shores as much as they're providing it in Kincardine. And I think the Coast Guard should be doing, and let's not forget that that's federal jurisdiction. As soon as you step off beyond the water's edge, you're in federal territory. And we are, so it's similar to us sending our firefighters into some other jurisdiction, like, off to, Underwood, 3.5 kilometers from the southern border of the municipality. to provide search and rescue without frankly having any kind of formal agreement with Kincardine, right? We don't have an agreement with Coast Guard. We have a, they can call us and we'll back them up, and we should do that. But we should be backing them up. We should be backing up the OPP. They should be in a position to provide primary response. And also, so should our neighboring municipalities. We're providing this service we're the only ones providing this. Our volunteer firefighters would go up to Sauble Beach to provide this service. But as far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but the municipality of South Bruce Peninsula doesn't have the same capability as we do in this front, do they?
They do not, sir.
So, when we talk about mutual aid, it's not very mutual when the other party can't reciprocate. Right? I mean, they should be backing us up. We back them up. But just like they have a volunteer firefighters that there's a fire in Wyerton, we'd go up there and help. Or if there's a fire in Kincardine, we'd go down there and help. In a heartbeat, we would. But they have a fire department that's the primary responders. We back them up. And that's what we should be doing, backing up our neighbors who provide those services. So I'm pleased that we're going to do this on the basis of an agreement with those neighboring municipalities. I think two things should be in those agreements. One, there should be some requirement that they have the service themselves. And we are providing secondary support. And two, there should be, if they're not going to do that, then we should have, that should be a fee for service. It shouldn't be a fee per call out. We shouldn't be getting paid every time we get called out. We should be getting paid all the time to have that position in a standby position, because we have to train people. We have to have equipment. We have liability, a lot of liability. Right? And these are volunteers. And you know me, and I harp on this, and I know our volunteers, and I don't, I know they want to do this work. And as I say, I commend them for it, but I don't want to overstretch them, sending them all over Hell's Half Acre, backing people up that aren't even providing the service themselves. These are volunteers. We have to protect that precious resource. So I have trouble with the whole thing, as you can tell. I support it. I will support it because people in the water need to be rescued. And so but we should be talking to the OPP and the Coast Guard and about what their level of service is. And we should not extend that service out to neighboring municipalities until we have council approved agreements in place that compensate us fairly for being the only ones providing that service. So I'm hopeful that the one thing the recommendation says is that we would direct staff to resume responding. I would like to give that direction after we have an agreement. And maybe the two things are, maybe it's a fine line there, but I guess I will vote for the recommendation on the understanding that I don't want to see that resume until we have an approved agreement. And I sort of hold back my final approval for providing that service to our neighboring municipalities until we have satisfactory agreements to this council in place that protect our volunteer firefighters. Chief?
It may not be worded appropriately, sir, but that's the intent, that the agreements will be before council like the other agreements, and council will give direction on whether to execute them or not. That's the intent.
Okay, so you've heard my rant. I'm sorry. Are there further comments or questions? I don't see any, so all in favor. That's carried. Okay. So now we're on to 8.4, communications and petitions for committee of the whole, 5 items there. Any comments to any of those? The deputy mayor.
Thank you. And through you, it's related to number 5 about licensed childcare spaces. I really feel a little bit uncertain about whether or not we're doing okay in terms of availability of childcare right here in Saugeen Shores. So I don't know who would be the appropriate person maybe, or department, or even maybe it's the county, to give us a little bit of information about how we're doing in terms of the provision of childcare services, because there is some merit to what Petrolia is suggesting. It's about increasing home licensed services to enable a couple more kids before and after school, which would help out, I'm sure, some parents. I just don't know if we're in a situation here that there's a bit of a crisis, or are we doing okay? Who can help us understand our own community situation with childcare?
And I can certainly, that's an item that's reported routinely to Bruce County Council. So I can certainly forward on to council the latest report on our situation with childcare spaces. We are short of childcare spaces, significantly short. That's, I can't recall the exact numbers off the top of my head, but we are short. And so, but I can also say that human services staff at the county are engaged in a large number of activities to try to rectify that situation. And so I'll pass along, I'll get them to send me a couple of reports to sort of outline that, and I can pass them along to council. Anything further on any of these items? I don't see anything. Okay, so we'll move on then to, I guess that brings us to the end of the committee of the whole. So let's do we can do very quick statements by members. We got a significant council meeting, so let's just short ones tonight. The deputy mayor.
Okay, I attended two Municipal Heritage Committee plaque unveilings. One was at the Coulter Parquet. It was about a little bit of history of downtown Port Elgin, business in downtown Port Elgin, and one at the Port Elgin Main Beach, which was about recreation and sport, or recreation and fun times at the beach. Councillor Halpin was at one with me as well, and members of the Heritage Committee. Great to have two more plaques unveiled. We have a couple more coming up too, and didn't have a lot of the public out, but we're hopeful that the next couple will do that. I did want to publicly apologize to the Southampton Residents Association for missing their meeting on Saturday. Just completely left my brain. I was literally half a block away when their meeting was going on. I did on Friday wander through the Marine Heritage Market, the first one of the year, and very, very well attended, very cool situation. So that's a wonderful addition to downtown. And the other thing that I did, I don't think I mentioned this last time, I spent an afternoon at Hampton Court, just talking with residents, and I encourage any member of council who has the opportunity to go to any of the care facilities and just hang out for a little while. They have great questions, and they also will tell you some really cool things about stuff that's gone on in this community over time. Thank you.
Thank you, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This past week, I lost a very close friend in Gary Wood. Gary was well known. He was a former CAO of Grey County, actually, and well known in that area as a former colleague of mine. Worked with Gary for many years. He was a director of financial services. He was one of the founders of the Scenic City Order Good Cheer. And I only mention that, it's not from Bruce County, but Gary was very, very well known in Grey County, rather, not so much in Bruce County, but terrific individual, and will be missed, and to his wife Barb and her family, deepest condolences. And more locally, Kent Milroy, deepest sympathies and condolences to Kent, who lost his brother Wayne Douglas Milroy this past week. And it's never easy. It's never easy losing a family member, and Kent's an important part of our community. I know he's feeling it right now with the loss of his brother. So deepest condolences.
Thank you, Councillor Matt. Thank you, Councillor Davinsky. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quickly, Canada Day celebrations in Southampton were fantastic. Thanks to the Chamber of Commerce, town staff, the Saugeen Shores and Southampton Rotary Clubs, the Southampton Community Band, all the volunteers. It was a wonderful occasion. This past Saturday night, Charlie Bell organized a wonderful big band reunion of the Stardust Big Band held at the Lakeshore Racquet Club. It was a fundraiser for the Hospital Foundation, and I understand they raised about $3,100. So it was a great event.
Thank you, Councillor Duhaime.
No further business to discuss there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Halpin. Okay, Councillor Stack, nothing this evening. Just quickly, for me, lots of things going on the last couple of weeks, but one that is important to mention, of course, is the announcement middle of last Wednesday. I was pleased to be at Bruce Power for the announcement of from the Minister of Energy and Bruce Power about the planning that is going to commence to build nuclear at the Bruce site. 4,800 megawatts of new generation is the sort of the long-term vision there, which is amounts to several can-do size reactors. And so obviously that's a major, it is the largest economic development news in our region since the middle 1970s, I would say. Will be a very major infusion of money. We're talking a tens of billions of dollar capital project of provincial significance. And so I just wanted to, of course, acknowledge that, but also note that it's important for us as a municipality to reconsider as we go forward all of the things that go into planning for the future of the municipality, population projections, all of the servicing that will be required, and to begin to talk about how we talk to the province about that impact on our community and how we can receive the appropriate compensation to make sure that we can service that provincially significant project appropriately. I think that that will be a subject of conversation between the municipalities. I know the First Nation is already talking about it. It's great news, I think, for our future. So it guarantees the future of that site, I would think, well into the 22nd century. But it certainly is a matter for us to consider carefully as we go forward planning the community. But an exciting time anyway. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Stack. All in favor? Committee stands adjourned and we will reconvene at 9 p.m. Right. I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting. I assume I can. Sorry, I just jumped into that. Yeah, sorry about that. We're going to call to order this regular council meeting. And the second item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. That moves on to additions, deletions, amendments. We don't have any of those. Adoption of the minutes. And I have the regular council minutes of June 19th, 2023, the regular council minutes, June 26th, 2023, and the committee of the whole minutes of June 26, 2023. There's a recommendation that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meetings of June 19th and June 26, 2023, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of June 26, 2023, as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Grace. Any questions or comments to any of those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, so then we are moving on past public meetings to close to public, and there is a resolution the council move into closed public session to discuss matters in accordance with Municipal Act 2001, Section 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, D, labor relations or employee negotiations, and K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. And this is to cover negotiations and discussions for an agreement relative to position recruitment and personal information about an identifiable individual and employee negotiations on a confidential matter. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor. All in favor? That is carried, and we'll move then into closed session, and we are doing that here or there or everywhere. Committee room. All right, off to the committee room. See you there. Okay, I will have a resolution that that council arise from the close to public session and resume the regular meeting. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Davinsky. All in favor? It's carried. All right, I will report that council gave direction to staff with regards to negotiations and discussions for an agreement relative to physician recruitment. And council gave direction to staff regarding personal information about an identifiable individual and employee negotiations on a confidential matter. All right, so now we will move on to, sorry about that, reports of the committee of the whole. And there are 6 reports there, and there is a resolution that council directs staff to advance the master planning process for North Shore Park. The council received the light industrial water rate request follow-up report for information. The council adopt a notice policy bylaw, a bylaw to adopt a policy governing the circumstances and manner in which the town shall provide notice. The council endorsed the 2024 business plan timelines, working toward a final budget presentation in December 2023. The council received the introduction to asset management report for information, and the council adopt a bylaw to enter into a fire services agreement with the town of South Bruce Peninsula for the provision of fire services as defined in Schedule A of the agreement. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Grace. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Okay, now we're on to reports of municipal officers and committees. The first one is Heritage Committee report on policy amendments, and there is a resolution the council approve. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, sorry, that's right. The council approved this property plaque program policy as amended and this Heritage Conservation Award policy as amended. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Grace, seconded by Halpin. Any questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, these policies were reviewed and updated by subcommittees that were specifically formed for that purpose. And then they were reviewed and approved by the whole committee, particularly with the plaque program or the plaque policy. There is an issue that may affect budget. Our committee will be discussing budget items and possible budget requests in our meeting next week. So just to give some background.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments? Is the Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And through you, I just want to commend Councillor Grace. Not only does she very, very efficiently and effectively chair the Municipal Heritage Committee meetings about once a month, she also sits on every single subcommittee that group has come up with, and it seems like every meeting there's another one created. So she definitely has put her heart and soul into the Municipal Heritage Committee. So good thing we made her the chair. But second of all, I just wanted to say that these are very, very valuable updates to policies that have worked really well in the past, but it was time for a refresh. So thank you, Councillor Grace, for that.
Yes, thank you. Anything further? Saying nothing, then all in favor? That's carried. All right, so now we will move on to item number 2, which is a staff report on the Pro Shop lease agreement renewal. There's a recommendation. The council adopt a bylaw to authorize a 5-year lease agreement with Gord's Pro Shop, care of Gord Lamont, to continue operating at the Saugeen Shores Community Complex. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Halpin, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor. Are any questions or comments to that one? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just a quick comment to thank Gord. You know, he, in a lot of ways, he's kind of the receptionist for the Plex as well, you know. I mean, everybody talks to the man when he comes in, when people come in and get their skate sharp, and he directs people, and he's just an ambassador for the community. So I think it's a good agreement, and I'll certainly be supporting it. But thanks to Gord Lamont for all he does for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Further questions or comments to this one? Seeing none, then all in favor? That is carried. All right, now we're on to bylaws, and there are 4 bylaws there for consideration. Anyone want to consider any of those individually? Seeing no request for that, then we'll read the resolution that bylaws 62, 2023, 63, 2023, 64, 2023, and 65, 2023 are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 10th day of July, 2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by Davinsky. All in favor? That is carried. And finally then, well, not quite finally, we have the confirmatory bylaw, and it is resolved that bylaw 66, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 10th day of July 2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Halpin. Huber and Halpin. All in favor? It's carried. And finally, we have a resolution at this regular council meeting of July 10th, 2023, hereby adjourns at 10:06 PM. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Halpin. Seconded by Duhane. All in favor? That is carried. Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.